Destiny 2 PvP is unique. There are lots of days where it just feels like nothing ever goes your way. Opponents seem to be jittering across the screen, and your shots just don't ever seem to land. Then there's those games where you're dropping 30 kills, get a couple gold medals, and you've just found the most overpowered loadout in the game. Well, I was very fortunate because I had one of those games 101 times in a row. Yes, I actually won 101 PvP games in a row. Yes, I know there is unfortunately a way to fabricate this number, and no, that was not the case for any of these wins. Obviously, I'm just a dude on the internet, so I totally understand any skepticism. But I wanted to put this video together to share some of the things that I discovered along this 101 game journey. Hopefully you can take some of these things and apply them to your own PvP success. We're going to split this video into two different sections. The first section will have to do with your expectations or your mindset within PvP. And the other section will have to do with your engagements or your gunfights within PvP. Let's start by talking about expectations. As weird as it sounds, at no point within the first 60 to 70 games was I ever thinking about or expecting to win the game I was playing in. In fact, it wasn't until I had about 70 wins on my in-game counter on the emblem when I actually noticed I was on a significant win streak. Obviously, I was trying to play the best that I could every game, but winning was never my sole focus. I was so fixated on my build, what weapons I was using, and just overall focusing on certain aspects of my playstyle that I just never recognized what the results of the match were. If you're playing in a fire team of any size, which was the case for me during this streak, expectations should change, especially if you're regularly playing with said fire team. However, when playing by yourself or in a smaller fire team, there's a couple things that you should absolutely consider at all times. First, always expect to fight two people at once. In other words, always expect to be in a 1v2 situation. This is especially the case in 6v6 modes where the map is populated with more players, which means there likely will be more scenarios where you see more than one person at any given time. Always assume there is going to be someone out there that you're not directly engaging with who is nearby waiting to take advantage of you after your initial fight. This is often referred to as being third-partied. Get into the habit of setting your Guardian up in a way where you have a quick out or a way for you to reset the fight. Whether that's a cover spot, staying near a teammate, whatever. Just make sure you've got a way to reset the fight to make it an even playing field for you again. The second thing you should assume is that your teammates won't have your back. Now, I know this sounds cynical, but hear me out. Going into a fight with the mentality that it's just going to be you putting damage down range is going to be a much different approach than one where you're expecting you'll have teammates putting shots down range with you. When you expect someone to be next to you and shooting at the same person, your guard is down. You don't put as much effort or thought into your positioning on the map or what the other person might be shooting you with. Going into a fight with the thought that it's you and only you changes your approach, which also changes how you engage. Again, this is obviously a different story if you're playing with other people, especially if they are people that you regularly play with. You likely know your teammates' tendencies, what they're good at, or even what loadout they're running. All of this is good information that can equate to your success within PvP. But if you really want to practice getting better, it starts with your mindset and your expectations going into the match. The mechanical stuff like aiming will take care of itself later on. Speaking of mechanical changes, let's move on to the second portion of the video and talk about engagements. One of the most common things I see people having a hard time with in PvP is trying to come out of Crucible matches with high kill totals. And most of the time, the way people go about doing this is by playing as aggressively as possible. Shotguns out all the time, frequent movement abilities, meta subclasses, and so on. This may work for a few games, but the moment they come across a good player or a team of players who excel at positioning on the map, they suddenly go back to their old production. This brings us to the topic of playing assertively, not aggressively. There's a crucial difference between these two adjectives that describe playstyles. Being assertive when you play means that you play with confidence. You know your limitations and your strengths, and you aren't willing to put yourself in situations where you might compromise that. An aggressive playstyle has a sense of recklessness tied to it. Sure, someone who plays aggressively can drop 20 to 30 kills a game, but like I said earlier, the moment they come across a group of players who know what they're doing, that aggressiveness becomes their limitation, their own undoing. If there was one thing I learned that significantly improved my performance in PvP during these 101 games, it was this. Being assertive really helped me focus in on what I was able to control in my matches, and it obviously set me up to be successful. Before I move on to the last part of the video, I want to make sure and mention that if you haven't seen my 4-step engagement video, I highly recommend going to check that out afterwards. In that video, I break down a really simple 4-step process to follow whenever you are starting a gunfight. It's got some good info in there, and hopefully it challenges you to think a little differently than you usually do. Oh, and if you enjoyed this video so far, please consider leaving a like. It helps this video appease the almighty YouTube algorithm. Thanks. Okay, so I want to make sure I spend some time talking about this last part, which I actually talk about in my 4-step engagement video as well, but I wanted to provide a little more context to that thought. If you're looking for something mechanical to work on, like something for you to physically do while you're playing, I want you to practice disengaging from fights more frequently. One of the hardest things for me to master in this game is disengaging from gunfights. Like a lot of us, my FPS background started with Call of Duty, and back then Call of Duty was known for its forward warriors. Those players that fully committed to a fight, even if they knew it was going to mean they had to respawn. They would do whatever it took just to get a kill, even if it was just a single kill. And I think the reason that was so common was because there really wasn't an efficient or easy way to get out of gunfights. That's not the case in Destiny. We as players have the utility to disengage from fights much easier than almost any FPS game out there. It's what makes Destiny Space Magic so intriguing. So use that dodge, blink, dash, shoulder charge, or whatever to get yourself out of a gunfight. I preach it all the time, so I'm sorry for those of you that have to hear it in another video, but it's so dang important. Value your life more than getting a kill. You're much more valuable to your team just being alive and taking up space on the radar than you are trying to solidify a kill and dying. You can do this by being more decisive in your decision making. One of my favorite Destiny content creators, Castle, has put out a bunch of videos on PvP tips, and in one of his Blitz tips videos, he brought up a tip that really stuck with me. Have a listen.
Tip number 6. Quick decision making is highly underrated in PvP. I know that sounds obvious, but I constantly see people hesitating to make a decision in fear of making the wrong one. Often, a mediocre decision with confidence is far better than the best decision being made too late. Indecision will cripple your improvement, so you're a lot better off being confident first and then learning after.
So that indecisiveness is really common with people who are trying to improve their PvP craft. I mean, it's common in anything that you're trying to get better at, right? If you do anything with confidence and assertion, you're going to be putting yourself in a better situation than if you're constantly doubting yourself or changing your mind. And in these 101 games, I can tell you for certain that 99% of the time, I was always focusing on something specific. That allowed me to block out any non-relevant thoughts like what my KD was or how many kills I was going to end up getting. There's a ton of things you can do to help shift your mentality around in PvP, so much so that you may surprise yourself. If any of that intrigues you, check out any of the videos on your screen right now. Thanks for watching, and as always, we'll see ya.